In the packed federal courtroom, a woman in a wheelchair sits motionless as the judge stares at her silver star with undisguised contempt. "Remove it," he demands, voice dripping with disdain. Spectators shift uncomfortably as she complies, placing the medal on the witness stand. The judge smirks, satisfied with her public humiliation. But what happens next will silence every person in that courtroom. No one knew who she really was until that moment. No one expected the document that would end his career in seconds. Before continuing this story, please comment below with your city or country where you're watching from. Your feedback inspires us to do better. The imposing marble columns of Charleston's federal courthouse towered above Captain Sarah Mitchell as she maneuvered her wheelchair up the accessibility ramp. Her movements were efficient, almost military in their precision, remnants of a life few in this building could recognize. The morning air carried the faint scent of salt from the nearby harbor, a familiar aroma that momentarily transported Sarah to other shores, other missions. She dismissed the memories, focusing instead on the manila folder resting on her lap. Inside were her carefully prepared notes about defective tactical vests that had failed to stop bullets they were rated to handle. Vests that had cost lives. The case against defense contractor Titan Security had drawn significant attention. As Sarah entered the building, she noticed an unusual number of military personnel in the lobby. Some in uniform, others like herself now in civilian clothes, but carrying themselves in ways that spoke of their service. Ms. Mitchell approached a young prosecutor, extending his hand. "Bradley Hayes. Thank you for coming today." Sarah shook his hand, noting the firm grip but inexperienced eyes. Too young to have handled many cases of this magnitude. "Your testimony could change everything," Hayes continued, walking beside her toward the elevators. "Titan has the best defense money can buy, and Judge Morrison has a reputation of being, let's say, friendly to defense in military contract cases." "I'm familiar with his track record," Sarah replied evenly. The elevator doors opened, revealing a crowded hallway before courtroom 3. Journalists clutched notepads, military officials spoke in hushed tones, and corporate types in expensive suits clustered near the entrance. The case against Titan Security had attracted a full gallery. Sarah positioned herself beside the prosecution table. Her neatly tailored navy suit concealed most of the scars along her neck and shoulders, though there was no hiding the wheelchair. The only hint of her past was a small silver star pin on her lapel, a quiet testament she never drew attention to. "All rise. The Honorable Judge Reginald Morrison," announced the bailiff. The courtroom rose as one, all except Sarah, who physically could not. Judge Morrison's entrance was imposing. His silver hair and patrician features radiated authority. His cold blue eyes swept the room before briefly settling on Sarah's seated figure. Something flickered across his face. Recognition? Disdain? It was gone before she could identify it. Morrison took his seat, adjusting his robes with practiced dignity. "Be seated." The preliminary proceedings moved quickly. Charges read, opening statements delivered. Titan's lead attorney, Theodore Blackwell, cut an impressive figure. Tall, with a mane of white hair and the confident bearing of someone accustomed to winning. His opening statement characterized the case as a witch hunt against an American company that had proudly served our military for decades. When Prosecutor Hayes called Sarah to testify, she felt the courtroom's attention shift. The bailiff approached to help, but she politely waved him off, maneuvering her chair to the witness stand with practiced ease. "Please state your name and profession for the record," instructed the court clerk. "Sarah Mitchell, security consultant specializing in military equipment evaluation." Blackwell immediately stood. "Your Honor, we'd like to challenge the witness's qualifications." Judge Morrison nodded. "Proceed." What followed was a methodical dismantling of her authority. Every time the prosecution attempted to establish Sarah's expertise, Blackwell objected, and Morrison sustained the objections. "Ms. Mitchell," Blackwell continued, his voice oozing condescension, "what exactly qualifies you to evaluate equipment used by our elite special operations personnel?" "I have first-hand experience with the equipment in question," Sarah replied evenly. "First-hand experience. As what? A factory inspector?" Chuckles rippled across the defense table. Sarah maintained her composure. In operational conditions. Judge Morrison interrupted, leaning forward. Ms. Mitchell, you speak as though you possess military authority, yet you present yourself before my court as a civilian consultant. The prosecutor objected to the characterization, but Morrison dismissed it with an irritated wave of his wrist. Your Honor, Hayes attempted. Ms. Yee, Mitchell's full qualifications are classified. I'm authorized to discuss equipment effectiveness, but not my entire background, Sarah interjected smoothly. Morrison's eyes narrowed. This court doesn't operate under classification, Ms. Mitchell. The defense has the right to question your expertise if you're presenting yourself as an authority. Blackwell saw his opportunity. Indeed, Your Honor, if the witness cannot verify her qualifications, her opinions about military equipment are mere speculation. As the cross-examination continued, Sarah noticed a gray-haired man enter the gallery. Admiral Wesley Kane from Naval Special Warfare Command. Their eyes met briefly. He gave an almost imperceptible nod. His presence was no coincidence, but Sarah remained focused on the increasingly hostile questioning. Let's be specific, Ms. Mitchell, Blackwell pressed. Did you personally use the Model 247 tactical vest in combat conditions? Yes. And you claim it failed to meet specifications? It wasn't designed to stop armor-piercing rounds, but it should have stopped the standard ammunition that killed, 3 servicemen in the incident I'm referencing. And what incident is that? Sarah hesitated, glancing at Hayes, who looked equally uncertain about the classification boundaries. Morrison's attention suddenly focused on Sarah's lapel. Counsel, approach the bench. The attorneys moved to the bench for sidebar discussion. Though they spoke in hushed tones, Sarah could read Morrison's body language, tense, disapproving. After a brief exchange, they returned to their seats, and Morrison addressed Sarah directly, his voice carrying across the hushed courtroom. Ms. Mitchell, are you aware that impersonating a decorated veteran is a federal crime? The courtroom fell silent. Every eye turned to Sarah, whose expression remained impassive despite the public accusation. I'm not impersonating anyone, Your Honor, she replied steadily. Then explain the medal you're wearing. Morrison's tone carried unmistakable skepticism. It was awarded to me, sir. Laughter erupted from the defense table. Even Morrison's mouth curled into a smirk. I've presided over cases involving Navy SEALs, Ms. Mitchell, he said, emphasizing her name with barely concealed mockery. I know their caliber. I know what it takes to earn a Silver Star. I suggest you remove that pin before I hold you in contempt of court. The prosecutor quickly stood. Your Honor, this is inappropriate. Sit down, counsel. Morrison's voice cut like steel. This court will not be a stage for stolen valor. Whispers in the gallery grew louder. Some spectators awkwardly averted their gazes, others openly stared at the unfolding spectacle. With deliberate calm that masked the humiliation, Sarah unpinned the Silver Star and placed it on the witness stand. The small clink of metal on wood seemed to echo in the tense silence. Morrison nodded with smug satisfaction. Now, given your apparent limitations, let's discuss your actual qualifications. The examination deteriorated further. Blackwell now emboldened to openly question how someone in her condition could evaluate equipment designed for the nation's finest warriors. Each time Sarah attempted to respond, Morrison found reason to limit her answer. In the gallery, Admiral Kane's expression darkened with each passing minute. He made a discreet phone call, speaking in hushed tones, before retrieving a sealed folder from his briefcase. Ms. Mitchell, Blackwell continued, isn't it true that your consulting firm has received substantial fees from Titan Securities competitors? No, that's inaccurate, Sarah replied. Then how do you explain? Your Honor, a commanding voice interrupted from the gallery. Admiral Kane stood, approaching the center aisle. Permission to approach as an officer of the United States Navy. Morrison, startled by the interruption, hesitated before nodding curtly. Approach. Admiral Kane walked forward, his dress uniform, heavy with ribbons drawing every eye in the courtroom. He presented his credentials to the bailiff, who passed them to Morrison along with the sealed folder. "This witness is testifying under limited disclosure agreement," Kane stated firmly. "I'm authorized to reveal her full service record in light of this unusual line of questioning." Morrison's face showed surprise, then something approaching apprehension. He accepted the folder with visible reluctance, breaking the classification seal with fingers that seemed less steady than before. As the judge began reading, Sarah noticed the subtle change in his complexion, from confident pink to ashen gray. His eyes moved rapidly across the document, widening slightly with each turned page. Kane stood at ease, waiting. The courtroom remained absolutely still, collectively holding its breath as they watched Judge Morrison's transformation from imperious to increasingly disturbed. "Your Honor," Hayes ventured after several long moments, "might we know the contents of this document?" Morrison looked up, meeting Sarah's eyes for the first time with something entirely new in his gaze. Not disdain now, but growing horror of recognition. Admiral Kane cleared his throat. "With your permission, Judge, I'll summarize for the court." Morrison didn't respond, seeming unable to find his voice. Kane took the silence as consent. Lieutenant Commander Sarah Mitchell served with Naval Special Warfare Development Group for 11 years. She completed 4 combat tours and led 29 high-value target extraction operations. A murmur rolled through the courtroom. Lieutenant Commander Mitchell was awarded the Silver Star, 2 Bronze Stars with V device, and the Purple Heart. Kane paused, turning to face Morrison directly. Lieutenant Commander Mitchell was severely wounded during Operation Neptune's Trident. 3 years ago, while extracting 18 hostages under heavy fire, she sustained spinal injuries that left her paralyzed below the waist. He paused again. One of those 18 hostages was Second Lieutenant David Morrison. "Your nephew, Judge." Gasps echoed through the courtroom. Judge Morrison's face went from ashen to nearly white, his hands visibly trembling as he gripped the folder. Twice he tried to speak, but no words came. Admiral Kane continued, his voice carrying the weight of decades of command. "Lieutenant Commander Mitchell led the extraction team that saved your nephew and 15 others from a rebel camp after their unit was ambushed. She personally covered their retreat despite multiple gunshot wounds." The courtroom transformed. Where moments ago there had been mockery and skepticism, now there was stunned silence. Sarah remained calm, her face betraying no emotion, though her eyes never left Morrison. "Order," the judge finally managed, his voice barely above a whisper. He cleared his throat and tried again. "Order in the court." But Kane wasn't finished. He retrieved a second document from the folder. This was declassified 30 minutes ago by direct authorization of the Secretary of the Navy. He handed it to the court clerk, who made copies for both legal teams. Records of correspondence between Judge Reginald Morrison and Titan security executives, dated 18 months ago. Correspondence specifically discussing how to handle any witnesses who might reference Operation Neptune's Trident. Prosecutor Hayes scanned the document, his expression shifting from confusion to shock to barely contained outrage. "Your Honor, I move for immediate dismissal based on judicial misconduct. These communications indicate clear conflict of interest and potential criminal conspiracy." Morrison's gavel struck. "That's enough. Court is in recess until tomorrow morning." "With respect, Your Honor," Admiral Kane interjected, "I'm instructed to inform you that the Chief Judge of this district has been notified and is en route to this courtroom. These proceedings will continue today under his supervision." As if on cue, the courtroom doors opened. Chief Judge Wellington Cross entered, expression grave. The bailiff again called for all to rise. Morrison remained seated at his bench, seemingly paralyzed by the sudden reversal of his fortunes. "Judge Morrison," Cross said quietly, approaching the bench, "I need to see you in chambers immediately." As Morrison was escorted out, his eyes met Sarah's one final time. In them, she saw not just the fear of a man whose career was crumbling, but the growing realization of who she truly was and what she had done for his family. The courtroom erupted in chaos the moment the judges left. Reporters rushed for exits, lawyers huddled in urgent conferences, and spectators buzzed about the dramatic turn of events. Through it all, Sarah remained at the witness stand, outwardly calm despite the storm around her. Admiral Kane approached. "Commander Mitchell," he said formally, loud enough for nearby observers to hear, "on behalf of the Navy, I apologize for what transpired here today." "No apology necessary, Admiral," she replied. "I've endured worse." "Indeed you have." His voice softened. "David has been notified. He's en route." Sarah nodded, the first hint of emotion crossing her features. "I never wanted to involve him in this. He involved himself the moment he learned Titan was under investigation. He's been trying to testify about equipment failures for months." Kane glanced toward the door where Morrison had exited. His uncle made sure he was silenced. Court remained in recess for nearly an hour. When proceedings resumed, Chief Judge Cross presided. Morrison was conspicuously absent. "In light of extraordinary circumstances," Cross announced, "I'm declaring a mistrial in United States versus Titan Security Contractors. A new trial will be scheduled with a different presiding judge. Additionally, a judicial conduct investigation is being opened regarding Judge Morrison's actions." He turned to Sarah, expression solemn. "Commander Mitchell, the court thanks you for your service, both today and to our nation. You're dismissed from further testimony at this time, though you'll be called for the new trial." Sarah retrieved her silver star from where it still lay on the witness stand, pinning it back to her lapel with steady hands. As she wheeled toward the exit, something remarkable happened. A military officer in the front row stood at attention, then another. Within moments, every service member in the courtroom was standing, rendering silent salute. In the corridor outside, reporters swarmed, shouting questions. Sarah wheeled through them without comment, heading toward a private conference room where Hayes had suggested they regroup. She'd nearly reached it when a familiar voice called her name. "Commander Mitchell." She turned to see David Morrison pushing through the crowd, his face flushed with emotion. Unlike his uncle, the younger Morrison had kind eyes, though now they were filled with shame and gratitude in equal measure. "David," she acknowledged quietly. "Can we speak privately?" Hayes appeared beside her, protective. "Commander, you're not obligated to speak with anyone at this time." "It's all right," she assured him. "Lieutenant Morrison and I have history." In the privacy of the conference room, David paced while Sarah waited patiently. He'd filled out since she'd last seen him, no longer the frightened young officer she'd pulled from that compound. "I had no idea my uncle was connected to Titan," he finally said, voice hoarse. "When I started asking questions about the vests, about why they failed, he told me he'd handle it, that the military needed discretion, not scandal." "And you believed him?" "He's my uncle. He raised me after my parents died." David ran a hand through his hair. "When I learned there was a trial, that you were testifying, I tried to come forward too. Suddenly, I was transferred to a base in Alaska. Every request I made to speak with investigators was blocked." Sarah studied him. "You were young, inexperienced. Titan convinced your unit to order those vests, despite them not meeting combat specifications. That's not entirely your fault." "But it was my signature on the forms," David insisted. 3 people died because I didn't question the vendor's claims. And you," his voice broke, "you nearly died saving us from the ambush that followed." "I was doing my job," Sarah said simply. "You never told anyone it was my mistake, did you? All these years you protected me." Before she could answer, the door opened. Admiral Kane entered with a man in a dark suit who introduced himself as Special Agent Crawford from the Department of Justice. "Commander Mitchell, Lieutenant Morrison," Crawford said, "we'd like to ask you both some questions about Judge Morrison's communications with Titan. It appears this goes beyond judicial misconduct. We're looking at potential obstruction of justice, witness intimidation, and possibly bribery." The next few hours were consumed by detailed interviews. Sarah recounted everything she knew about the defective equipment, the ambush that followed, and her interactions with Judge Morrison in court. David, visibly shaken but resolute, detailed his uncle's efforts to keep him from testifying. By evening, the courthouse had largely emptied, though a few persistent reporters remained in the lobby. Sarah declined Hayes's offer of a ride, preferring to make her own way home. Exiting the building, she found David waiting by the accessibility ramp. "I'm testifying at the new trial," he said, without preamble. "Full disclosure of the procurement process, pressure from Titan, everything. That could affect your career." "I don't care, it's right. After what you sacrificed, it's the least I can do." Sarah studied him, seeing not the mistake he'd made but the man he'd become because of it. "Sometimes our worst decisions lead to our best growth. Don't waste the opportunity." As David left, Admiral Kane approached carrying a small box. "Commander, a moment." He walked in step with her wheelchair toward the parking area. "The Secretary wanted you to have this," he said, opening the box to reveal a Navy and Marine Corps medal. It should have been presented years ago, but certain influences prevented it. Morrison, Sarah surmised, among others. Titan has powerful friends. Kane's expression hardened. Had powerful friends. A lot is changing quickly as of this morning. Sarah accepted the medal with a grateful nod. What happens to Morrison now? He's already submitted his resignation. The criminal investigation will continue, but regardless of outcome, his judicial career is over. Kane looked at her thoughtfully. "You could have exposed him any time in the past 3 years. Why didn't you?" "This was never about him," Sarah replied. "It was about making sure those vests never failed another operator. That was always the mission." Kane nodded with understanding. "The mission continues then. The new trial is scheduled for next month. Think you're ready for another round?" "Always, Admiral." For the first time all day, Sarah smiled. "I still have work to do." Later that night, alone in her apartment overlooking Charleston Harbor, Sarah placed the new medal beside her silver star. On a small memorial shelf she maintained, among the medals and photographs was a folded flag and service portrait of Commander Ashley Rodriguez, her team leader who died covering their evacuation from that compound, ensuring she and the hostages got out alive. "Progress today, Ash," she whispered to the photograph. "Slow but forward." Her phone rang, Hayes calling with updates. The prosecutor informed her that following Judge Morrison's resignation, 3 more Titan executives had been indicted. The trail of evidence was rapidly expanding, revealing a pattern of corner-cutting on military equipment that spanned nearly a decade. "Your testimony cracked it open," Hayes said. "We've had whistleblowers coming forward all day, people who were afraid to speak before." "Good," Sarah replied. "Keep me informed." After ending the call, she wheeled to the window, looking out at the darkening water. Lights from the naval base twinkled in the distance, a world she'd once belonged to completely, and in many ways still did. Her body had changed, but the mission remained the same: protect those who serve. Tomorrow would bring more depositions, more investigations, more battles fought in conference rooms instead of combat zones. But tonight, for the first time in 3 years, she felt the weight of unfinished business beginning to lift. Justice, like healing, comes in its own time. The judge who'd tried to strip her of honor was facing his own reckoning, and the truth about Titan's failures would finally see light. This wasn't victory, not yet, but it was a beachhead secured, and Sarah Mitchell knew how to advance from there. A month later, Sarah found herself in the marble halls of the Capitol building, her wheelchair gliding smoothly over polished floors. Congressional hearings on military procurement oversight had attracted significant media attention, especially after the very public collapse of Judge Morrison's career and subsequent revelations about Titan security contractors. The spacious hearing room was already filled when she arrived. Representatives from every service branch sat at long tables alongside procurement officials and defense industry leaders. Notably absent were Titan representatives, whose leadership now faced multiple federal charges. "Commander Mitchell," greeted Congresswoman Maria Valdez, extending her hand. As chair of the Oversight Committee, Valdez had played a crucial role in expanding the investigation beyond Titan to examine the entire military procurement process. "Thank you for agreeing to testify today." "I appreciate the opportunity, Congresswoman," Sarah replied, shaking the offered hand. "Your experience provides unique perspective as both special operations personnel who relied on this equipment and someone who saw firsthand the consequences of its failure." Valdez lowered her voice. Not everyone is happy you're here. The defense industry has powerful lobbyists. I'm accustomed to resistance, Sarah said with a slight smile. When the hearing began, Sarah once again found herself in the spotlight, though under vastly different circumstances than in Judge Morrison's courtroom. Here, her full service record was acknowledged, her expertise unquestioned. She presented detailed testimony about equipment failures that had compromised missions and cost lives. The problem extends beyond Titan, she explained to the committee. The current procurement system prioritizes cost reduction over performance. Contracts are awarded to the lowest bidder with insufficient field testing before equipment reaches operators. What would you recommend, Commander? Asked Congressman Rivers. Mandatory extended field testing by actual combat units before full deployment. Streamlined reporting systems for equipment failures that aren't buried in bureaucracy. And most importantly, criminal liability for executives who knowingly provide substandard equipment to service members. The last recommendation caused a stir among the industry representatives present. But Sarah continued calmly. When a CEO makes a decision that saves money but costs lives, it should be treated as seriously as any other form of criminal negligence. During a brief recess, David Morrison approached Sarah, now wearing captain's bars, a recent promotion following his own testimony against Titan. Commander, he greeted her formally, aware of watching eyes. Your testimony was compelling. As was yours last week, Captain, she acknowledged. How are things at the Pentagon? Different, he admitted. Some see me as a whistleblower, others as someone who helped bring down his own uncle. But the Procurement Reform Task Force is making real progress. He hesitated. They're calling it the Mitchell Protocol. Sarah raised an eyebrow. I wasn't informed. It's being announced today. The committee wanted it to be a surprise. David looked uncomfortable. My uncle tried to contact me again yesterday. I didn't take the call. His jaw tightened. Some betrayals can't be fixed with an apology. Before Sarah could respond, Admiral Kane joined them. They're ready to resume. Commander, you have the closing statement. When the hearing reconvened, Congresswoman Valdez addressed the room. Before our final testimony, I want to announce that this committee has unanimously approved the initial framework for what we're calling the Mitchell Protocol, a comprehensive overhaul of military equipment procurement procedures designed to prioritize service member safety and equipment reliability. Applause erupted, catching Sarah off guard. She'd never sought recognition, only accountability. Commander Mitchell, Valdez continued, you have the floor for closing remarks. Sarah moved her wheelchair to the central position and adjusted the microphone. Thank you, Congresswoman. I'm honored by the committee's decision, though I must emphasize that this protocol represents the collective efforts of many people who worked tirelessly to expose procurement failures. She paused, gathering her thoughts. 3 years ago, 18, service members, including myself, faced a situation no military personnel should face. Our equipment failed when we needed it most. 3 died immediately, 2 more during evacuation. I sustained injuries that ended my field career. The room was completely quiet. I'm not here seeking sympathy or recognition. I'm here because those who died deserve accountability, and those serving today deserve better protection. The Mitchell Protocol isn't about me. It's about ensuring that when we send our people into harm's way, we've done everything possible to bring them home safely. When she finished speaking, the committee members rose in standing ovation that spread through the entire room. Even industry representatives who'd seemed hostile earlier reluctantly joined. Outside the Capitol, reporters waited with cameras and microphones. Sarah answered their questions with the same composure she'd maintained throughout the hearing, deflecting personal praise and focusing on procurement reforms. Commander Mitchell, called a reporter from the back, is it true that Judge Morrison has been sentenced on federal corruption charges? I have no information beyond what's been publicly reported, she replied evenly. Do you feel vindicated after how he treated you in court? Sarah paused. This was never about personal vindication. It was about fixing a system that was failing our service members. I hope today's hearing marks a significant step toward that goal. As the press conference concluded, Sarah noticed a woman standing apart from the reporters, watching intently. She recognized Eleanor Morrison, the judge's wife, though they'd never formally met. The woman approached as the crowd dispersed. "Commander Mitchell, I wanted to thank you." Sarah's surprise must have shown on her face. "Not for what happened to my husband," Mrs. Morrison clarified. "That was his own doing, but for saving David. We never knew the full story of what happened that day. Reginald kept so much from me." "Your nephew is a good man," Sarah said. "He made a mistake, but he's working to correct it." Unlike his uncle. Mrs. Morrison's expression hardened. "Reginald always cared more about appearances than truth. Even now, he refuses to accept responsibility." She straightened her shoulders. "I filed for divorce yesterday. Thought you should know." Sarah wasn't sure how to respond to this unexpected confession. "I'm sorry for what your family is going through." "Don't be. Sometimes structures need to collapse before they can be properly rebuilt." Mrs. Morrison offered a sad smile. "Perhaps that's true for procurement systems and families alike." After the woman left, Admiral Kane approached. "Ready to go?" "There's a reception at the Pentagon." "One stop first, if you don't mind," Sarah replied. 20 minutes later, their car pulled up at Arlington National Cemetery. Kane waited respectfully as Sarah maneuvered her wheelchair along the pathways to Section 60, where many of the fallen from recent conflicts were buried. She stopped before a white marble headstone inscribed, "Commander Ashley Rodriguez, United States Navy. Silver Star, Purple Heart. Operation Neptune's Trident." "Hello, Ash," she said quietly. "We made progress today." She placed a small copy of her Silver Star by the headstone. "This belongs to you as much as me. You made sure we got out that day. I made sure they fixed the problem." Spring wind rustled through the cherry trees, their blossoms drifting across the manicured grounds. Sarah sat in silence for several minutes, remembering her mentor and friend. "The Mitchell Protocol," she finally said. "Can you believe it? You'd probably find that amusing." "You always said I was too stubborn to let anything go." She smiled at the memory. "You were right." As the sun began to set, casting long shadows across the cemetery, Sarah headed back to where Kane waited. "Thank you, Admiral. Now I'm ready for the reception." The Pentagon was illuminated against the darkening sky as they approached. Inside, the reception was already underway, attended by military officials, legislators, and defense industry representatives who'd supported the reforms. Sarah entered to spontaneous applause, which she acknowledged with a nod, before moving through the crowd to speak with key supporters. Near the end of the evening, Defense Secretary Caldwell called for attention. "Today marks a significant shift in how our military approaches equipment procurement. The Mitchell Protocol will save lives and improve operational effectiveness." He raised his glass. "To Commander Mitchell, whose persistence made this possible, and to those whose sacrifices demanded these changes." Later, as the reception was winding down, David approached Sarah one final time. "I've been assigned to the protocol implementation team," he said. "We'll be working with every service branch to establish new testing procedures." "Good," Sarah nodded. "Keep the standards tight. Lives depend on it." "I know." His expression grew serious. "I wanted you to hear this from me first. I've given a full statement to the prosecutors handling my uncle's case. Everything I know about his arrangements with Titan, the pressure he put on me to stay quiet, all of it." "That couldn't have been easy," Sarah observed. "Easier than living with silence any longer." David straightened. "You taught me that accountability isn't just about accepting blame. It's about creating change so the same mistakes don't happen again." "You're learning," she acknowledged with a slight smile. As Sarah left the Pentagon that night, she felt a sense of completion that had eluded her since the day of the ambush. The system that had failed her team was being reformed. Those responsible were facing consequences. And perhaps most importantly, those still serving would be better protected. Her phone buzzed with a message from Hayes, the prosecutor. "Morrison rejected plea deal. Trial continues next month. Will you testify?" Without hesitation, she typed back, "Of course." The battle wasn't over. Perhaps it never would be completely, but significant ground had been taken. A beachhead secured. Looking up at the stars appearing in the night sky, Sarah thought of Ashley and the others who hadn't made it home. "Mission continues," she whispered. "We're not finished yet." The next morning, Sarah woke to news headlines announcing formal adoption of the Mitchell Protocol and expanded investigations into 3 other defense contractors. What had begun as one woman's testimony against a corrupt judge and negligent company had grown into a movement for accountability across the entire military procurement system. Preparing for another day of interviews and planning sessions, Sarah glanced at the shadow box on her wall displaying her Silver Star and the recently presented Navy and Marine Corps medal. Beside them hung a photograph of her team before the fatal mission, all standing whole, unaware of what lay ahead. She touched Ashley Rodriguez's image, her mentor who'd given her life covering their retreat. "We did it, Ash," she said quietly. "We made it count." Outside her window, an American flag snapped in the morning breeze. From wounded warrior to systemic reformer, Sarah Mitchell had found a new way to serve. The battlefield had changed, but the mission remained the same. Protect those who answer the call to defend their country by whatever means necessary, and ensure that those in power who fail them are held accountable, regardless of how high their position or how untouchable they believe themselves to be. 6 months later, Sarah sat in a packed congressional chamber, watching as the president signed the Military Accountability Act, comprehensive legislative reform based on the Mitchell Protocol. Beside her sat David Morrison, now lieutenant colonel, who'd headed the implementation team for the new standards. "This law," the president announced to the assembled crowd, "ensures that those who profit from our service members by providing them substandard equipment will face criminal prosecution. It also establishes the strictest military equipment testing standards in our nation's history." Applause rolled through the chamber. Sarah noticed Judge Morrison in handcuffs being led away after his sentencing to 5 years in federal prison for corruption and obstruction of justice. His eyes met hers briefly, no longer holding arrogance, only the defeat of a man who'd lost everything to his own greed. After the ceremony, Admiral Kane approached Sarah. "Commander, I have a proposal. The department wants you to head a new defense contract oversight agency. Permanent position, full authority to investigate contractors and recommend prosecutions." Sarah considered the offer. It would mean staying in Washington, continuing the fight in boardrooms and committees rather than battlefields. But it would also mean ensuring that Ashley's sacrifice and that of others was never forgotten, that the system kept improving. "I'll accept the position," she said, "with one condition. Name it." "The agency will be called the Rodriguez Oversight Center, in honor of those who paid the price for system failures." Kane smiled. "I think that can be arranged." A year later, Sarah stood before Ashley Rodriguez's portrait in her new office, reporting another victory. Titan Security had been liquidated, its assets sold to compensate families of the fallen. 15 other defense contractors had been investigated, 7 shut down for fraud. But most importantly, there hadn't been a single case of equipment failure in combat for the entire year. The new testing standards were working. Lives were being saved. Her phone rang. David calling from a military base in Afghanistan where he was testing the new generation of tactical vests. "Commander," he said, his voice clear despite the distance. "Systems are performing flawlessly. The Mitchell Protocol has already saved 12 lives this month alone." "Good news, Colonel," she replied. "Keep me posted." After ending the call, she turned to Ashley's portrait. "We changed the system, Ash. Now it works." Outside the window, the sun set over the Potomac, painting the sky in shades of gold and crimson. Sarah Mitchell, no longer invisible, no longer forgotten, stood guard, ensuring that those who serve were protected and those who betrayed them faced justice. Some battles are won with bullets, others with documents, hearings, and unwavering determination to never give up. Sarah had won both, and now she stood watch to make sure the victory would last. The mission was complete. The system changed. Justice served. But the work continued. It always continued.